Hi, Jamie. My name's Hannah. I'm a social worker. It's nice to meet you today. Did you get on the Zoom okay?
Yeah, I was able to get on okay.
Okay, awesome. I did get your intake form and I've read through it a bit. Today, I was just thinking that we would take some time to kind of get to know each other a little bit. We'll go through some questions and you'll tell me about yourself. I also sent over some consent forms. Did you have any questions about those?
What do those mean? I didn't necessarily read through all of them.
Sure. And that's totally typical. And there's a lot of jargon in there. So I don't blame you for that at all. Some of the big things to know is that what we say in our session will stay between us. There are three exceptions to that rule. So if you would disclose to me that you are thinking about harming yourself or anyone else, I would have to disclose that information. Um, Another way that our session might not stay confidential would be if I was subpoenaed by a judge as well. Um, that's basically all you need to know. Any other questions that came up?
No, that makes sense. Thank you for explaining that to me.
Sure thing. Okay, so I usually like to start my session with just asking what brought you in today.
I haven't been feeling the best, and I've been really busy with school and work, and um, I guess normally in my own life, I'm very overwhelmed, and I would say sad a lot, and so I cry, and I think I just thought a lot of these things were like normally a part of my life, but Um, my partner and a couple of my friends think it would be beneficial to talk to someone, and I don't know what talking to someone necessarily means.
I see, I see. Well, I do hear that in your voice that there's, some pain and sadness going on. Could you tell me a little bit more about how long that's been going on for you?
Um, I would say ever since I was a teenager, so it's been a handful of years now.
Okay. And you're a freshman in college, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And with this transition into college, have you felt like that those feelings of sadness have increased or fluctuated in any way?
Um, well, I feel like when school is around, it gets worse. So, I'm assuming like this summer break, I would still be sad, but maybe not as much as when school is present.
Mhm. It sounds like school is kind of a stressor for you.
Yeah, I think I've always had a really high pressure on myself to do well.
Mhm,
So school is not only a stress in that it brings more things that I have to complete and places I have to be around campus, but
mhm,
I simply want to do well. I don't want to just do what is a bare minimum for me.
mhm. Yeah, I hear that that can be really overwhelming, um, especially when we're kind of pushing ourselves to do really well and to excel. How are you managing all those tasks that you need to do and the task for all your classes?
I've been managing, I think, as I can. I sometimes I just have like a lot of emotional releases, so
Mm,
like, I'll come home at the end of the day and cry or just lay down or spend a lot of time on my phone.
mhm. And with those emotional releases, with the crying, with spending time on your phone, are you feeling like, well, I guess with the spending time on your phone, are you kind of going through social media? Are you connecting with friends? What does that look like?
I'll message a friend here and there, but it's not necessarily like a conversation. It's more like sending a post or just something that reminds me of them. But
Mhm,
it's usually just scrolling
mhm.
for a long time on social media.
Okay. And with those people that you are reaching out to, um, are those friends from home? Are you making some new friends at college? What does that look like?
I would say they're both home and here. I have made a few friends in the university, but not as many as I wish I would have. I've just been finding that it's hard to find community on campus.
Yeah, absolutely. And what kind of community would you kind of be looking for? Like people who align with your personal interest, align with your background? What would you be looking for?
I would say background
Mhm.
and maybe both culturally and yeah. Like I would like to meet other first generation students. I'd like to meet more diverse people. I feel like so far a lot of my classes, everyone just seems like they know what they're doing and their parents went to college and it seems like they have a good handle on what's going on, and I feel like I don't have the same.
Yeah. Yeah, that can be really tough. Would you mind sharing a little bit more about your cultural background with me?
Yeah, I am Mexican American from Chicago, and my parents weren't born in the US, but I was. So um sometimes I navigate a little bit of both. Sometimes I don't necessarily feel I would say American enough.
Mm,
I think sometimes people can tell that I'm not um I guess like them, and then in my own context of being Mexican American, sometimes I don't feel Mexican enough because I'm
mm,
not um the most fluent, or I don't, go back home all the time. And I don't necessarily know what home is all the time.
I see. Well, I'm not Mexican American myself, but want to learn more about your cultural background and do my own research as well to help support you. It does sound like it can be really difficult to be stuck in between those kind of two worlds of like you're seeing this very American stereotype kind of like college experience and then trying to go navigate back to more of a cultural background that aligns more with your parents and how even language can be a barrier too. And maybe it kind of feels like you're stuck in between those two identities. Do you feel like that contributes to some of the sadness and maybe depressive thoughts that are going on?
I've never truly considered it, or I just don't always know what I thought is the cause of everything, but I definitely think it is a part of it. Because I find it hard to find like a support system.
Hmm.
It's difficult to people can say that they understand where I'm coming from, but then they'll never truly like know what that is unless they've experienced it themselves.
Right, that makes a lot of sense. As far as groups on campus, um, it's okay if you don't know or haven't been able to connect with them, but I'm wondering if there could be maybe some cultural groups where you could it would be easier to find those people with similar experiences. I'd be happy to help you research that if you're interested.
I would appreciate that, yeah.
Awesome. Okay. So I'm gonna bounce around a little bit. We heard a little bit about your background. Um, I think if it's okay with you, I may ask some questions about family and kind of transition that way. Um, So, why don't you tell me about your parents and what they're like?
Um so my mom and dad, I do have younger siblings, and my mom and dad have been together for all of us and they still are, but I find that they argue a lot in a way that seems very I feel like my household, because of my mom, was always up or down. It was never really in between.
Mhm.
Um, and it still is that way. My mom grew up with a pretty tough life. She was in foster care for about 10 years. And when she was in foster care, she just tells me that she had to go to therapy.
Mm,
And as an adult now, she doesn't go to therapy because she sort of says, like, I've already done it. I don't need to go back. And my dad is pretty passive. Um, and I've found out through my mom that he has had depression or had depression. Um, but yeah, it's just kind of my mom has always been all over the place. She's very controlling and loud and starts arguments, or it's always like one or the other. She's usually very happy and excited for us, or she's usually very angry, and
mm,
it's always back and forth, mom.
mhm. Yeah, I really hear that. And I hear a lot of like some of that background may be really deeply rooted in trauma. It sounds like with the foster care system, especially in being like removed from her home and being forced to go to therapy when maybe that wasn't a safe place can be really traumatizing. And even in, like you were saying about her mood fluctuations, sometimes we see that as a commonality with childhood trauma. And that would make a lot of sense as to, why she's been struggling the way she has. And it sounds like your dad has had his own experience with depression as well. I saw in your intake that your mom maybe disclosed that he had had some suicidal ideation?
Yeah, she had sort of disclosed that I'm older now, but I think she had just mentioned when I was a kid throughout a lot of my early life that that was what my dad was going through.
Mhm,
And she stated that just to give me context on maybe why, I don't know, the way he is,
mhm.
how he is. I'm not sure why she told me, but that was the one and only time she's really mentioned that.
I see, okay. Thank you for sharing that with me. Um, that's a lot to hold. That's a lot to hold from your parent figures and kind of figuring out what that means for you. Is this hereditary? Is this something that's learned? You know, there's a lot of questions I'm sure that are running through your head, and I'd be happy to help you kind of sort through those. Um, I think at this point, I do want to ask you some things about your siblings and maybe some um, context of like how your household was growing up. So I saw that you have four brothers. Could you tell me a little bit about them?
Yeah, I have four younger brothers, and I guess a lot of I'm closer to two of them than the other two. But one of my brothers is autistic. One of my brothers has hearing problems, and those two I often find that I don't get along with them, and I don't necessarily attribute it solely to their what they have going on health wise, but I just they definitely took up a lot of mom and dad's attention because they needed more care. And so I often get along well with my other brothers just because we, I guess, feel the same as far as like how we've been not always given the most care because we, I guess, didn't necessarily need it, quote unquote. Um, so it's a little bit 50-50. I don't care for two of them. And it's just because we never got to have that relationship, and the other two, we still talk here and there.
Yeah, that sounds really hard, especially when your parents are really focused on one sibling and you feel like maybe your needs aren't quite being met. But I'm glad that you have that support of some of your brothers, and it sounds like a close relationship with at least some of them. Um, that's really hard. And I'm just thinking about the relationships and maybe how that has affected you growing up as well. Um, Tell me a little bit about your friend group and some of the friends that you've made as you've transitioned to college.
Since starting college, I um met someone through we had like an orientation
Hmm.
before school started for I guess Latin kids or Latinx kids, and I met a lot of my friends through that.
Hmm.
And so I had met my current boyfriend through there, and then I have about 3 friends from there that I've made,
Mm,
and we're not they're not, like, my closest friends I've ever had because I think it's only been this school year, but we do spend a lot of time together, so we sort of coordinate, we live in dorms that are nearby, and we sort of coordinate, like, where we're gonna study.
mhm,
We try to coordinate when we're gonna eat at the dining hall together, and it's just nice having people to spend time with, but I don't necessarily always feel like I can tell them everything.
okay. Where do you feel like that barrier is that you feel like you can't tell them everything? Like, what is that? Can you tell me more about that?
Well, sometimes I feel that I don't think everyone feels the same way as I do all the time, but I think they're also students and they're also, in their first year, they're also transitioning from being away from home. And sometimes I don't think that they want to hear. I think I think maybe they would be caring enough to hear. I don't think they're not caring people. I just think I'm almost trying to do it for them. Like I don't want to overwhelm them. I don't want to, when people tell me stories or tell me about their life, I sort of take it on myself as well, and that can be a little overwhelming, and so I don't want to overwhelm anyone else.
I hear you. I hear you. Okay. And that, like, sounds really heavy and it seems like a lot for you to hold. I also do see, on a lighter note, that I do see that that also tells me that you're a really empathetic person and you take on those other like emotions that other people have, and that can be a really great strength, but I can also see how that can be really overwhelming at times. And then why you would think that maybe expressing how you're feeling and what you're going through and trying to relate could be too overwhelming for someone else. That totally makes sense. Um, but I'm hoping that maybe as we continue therapy, we can come up with some options and plans for kind of um, maybe expressing some of those things to our friends and establishing maybe some safe relationships with them so that you do have an outlet and somebody safe to talk to in that friend group. Um, and you might be surprised too that they may be feeling the same way and maybe having a hard time as well, but feel like they need to keep that inside. So as we go along, we can definitely talk more about that. You mentioned that you have a boyfriend. Would you tell me a little bit about your relationship with him?
Yeah, I had met him during the orientation, and he is a year older, so he's a sophomore, and I just remembered being at this orientation, and we were at a ropes course here in, Ann Arbor, and he was sort of off to the side alone, and I had assumed that he was, like, a student who needed, um, like, a fellow incoming student, and so I had just found out he was, like, really shy, which I thought was funny, and I guess he didn't need me to sort of tell him to come hang out with me and my friends, but yeah, I think it's been really I've never dated before, and I wasn't necessarily, like, allowed to when I grew up because my parents want me to focus on my studies, but I would say it's kind of how it's been. It's very my parents don't know, and my friends like him, and that's been helpful, but, I still feel like they don't get to see all of, like, who I am as well.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, it sounds like he's a sweet person and, has been a good support to you. Do you feel like you can kind of show your whole self to him? Is he supportive in that way?
Yeah. Well, sometimes I feel like I show too much or yeah, I think because I've gotten very comfortable with him, he's one of the few people that I have in my life where, um, I can cry or be angry or upset or go through any emotion that I'm feeling, and I know that he won't, I guess, judge me for that or make me feel bad about it.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, he sounds like a safe person for you, which I'm really glad to hear. but I can also hear that there's, some maybe some guilt that you're holding for the ways you're feeling and not wanting it to, affect him or feel like he's regulating you necessarily. Um, but I do hear that he does sound like a safe person, and I think as we maybe go along in therapy, we can definitely talk about some tools and skills on how to um, continue having him as a safe person, but not, and kind of dealing with that guilt of maybe like putting some of those harder emotions on him and how we kind of balance that. Um, let's see. I see that on your intake here, you are a student worker. It looks like you're working at the dining hall. How is that job going?
I don't really care for it.
Mm.
I find it's not stressful and that it's hard. It's just I know I always hear that other people have jobs where they can do homework or they can I don't really get to do homework or I just sort of taken a job because it's near my current dorm and I have work study.
Gotcha. Okay. So it sounds like it's not necessarily a job that you're feeling really invigorated by, you're passionate about, but something that's kind of necessary to help pay for school. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, I don't expect jobs throughout college to be, I guess, rewarding, but I think it would be helpful if I could make money and like get some homework done.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you feel like you have met some kind of coworkers, um, or even supervisors that have been a good fit for you?
The supervisors, I think, because it's a dining hall environment and not a different environment, I think they are understanding of our schedules. And I'd say I've met some other people at the dining hall who are just very similar in that they like with some a lot of us wish that we had different jobs or
Yeah.
we were doing something different.
Okay. Would you be interested in staying with that job or exploring some other ones maybe next semester?
I'm open to exploring new jobs. I would not like to stay at this one throughout undergrad.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I can hear it in your voice a little bit. It just doesn't feel like it's the best fit for your interests. And maybe as we go along, we could potentially look at some new ones, or maybe things that maybe align a little bit more with your passions and professional interest. And that might help it feel less, dreaded as you go to work, because that's not how we want you to feel. We at least want you to feel like you're, having some impact or you're learning something, um, and then also be making money. That's the ideal situation, right? Let's see. So I want to circle back a little bit to maybe some of the depressive symptoms that you're having, and we can kind of maybe go through a little bit more specific questions if that's okay with you. I'm going to pull up an assessment really quick just to kind of organize those questions. Just give me one moment. Okay. So I heard you say before that you're having, this sadness. You're coming home from class and either releasing that through crying or potentially kind of regulating yourself through scrolling for hours on end on your phone. Um, would you say that that depressed mood is prevalent through most of the day, nearly every day? Or a few times a week? How frequent does that feel for you?
It's almost every day.
Okay.
I think if I have what I would perceive to be a good day, it's not I don't know how often those are, but it's usually because there's something going on.
Mhm.
So if there's like an event to go to for school or it's someone's birthday, like those are usually good days, but every other day sort of feels very like I'm very tired. I'm avoiding doing things. I don't want to go to parties.
Gotcha. And would you say those like kind of monotonous like class days that you don't have a schedule of this, and this is due, would those be then your more stressful and more depressive days?
Yeah, those are usually where I'm having a really hard time
Yeah. Okay.
overall.
And it sounds like you're having a little bit of decreased interest or pleasure in some of the things that you do enjoy doing, like going to parties. Um, has there been any other decreased interest in any of the other hobbies or activities that you usually like to do?
Yeah, so like um I like to make art and do video game and play video games. And sometimes my boyfriend before bed can ask me like, "Do you want to play some video games?" And I just I would like to play them with him to make to bond or to, have an activity together, but I'm often not interested or
Mm,
I don't or I make art and then I look at it and I think this didn't usually I would feel really happy about it or take some joy from it, and I feel like sometimes I do hobbies that I usually used to like to do, and
mm,
I can't remember the last time that they've really brought joy or maybe given me something positive.
gotcha. Okay. Do you feel like you're more so like forcing yourself to do those things and it doesn't pull you out of those depressive like moods? Yeah.
Yeah, because I feel like on campus they preach a lot of self-care, and I
Mm,
think, um, some of them seem like they won't be helpful, like,
mm,
people joke and say to do a face mask, but I think
mm.
I've been trying to make art or do things that usually would enjoy, and I'm finding that they're just not doing much for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear that. And sometimes those things can be very like surface level, right? Of trying to do self care, which self care is super important, but that doesn't have to look the same for everyone. And sometimes self care routines don't pull us out of our dysregulated moods either. And we might have to use different tools to do that. And we can definitely talk about that as we go along. Um, let's see. How is your sleep schedule looking? Are you feeling like you're getting 6 to 8 hours a night of sleep?
Um, I don't necessarily know what the pattern is, but I find that I'm oversleeping or undersleeping, and
Mm,
I can't remember the last time where it's been in between. It's either one or the other, and it's not necessarily on a day by day basis. Like it can be like the past week I've been oversleeping, but then before that it was undersleeping.
I see. Okay. Okay. And then as far as nourishing your body, do you feel like you're getting adequate meals in every day?
Um, Sometimes it just depends on what like the dining halls have or how money is. So sometimes I feel like I either don't have an appetite because I sometimes I feel like because I'm so busy, eating doesn't feel like it's something to be enjoyed. It just feels like I have 3 classes and I have a meeting and I have other things, and therefore my appetite's just sometimes not the best.
Hmm. Yeah. Do you tend to notice that it's pretty low when you're feeling really stressed out?
Yeah,
Okay.
I because I just kind of view food as like substance and not maybe some other things that it could be.
Okay. Hear that. Do you feel like your weight or body size has like fluctuated during this period more than usual?
Um, I think I've always been overweight, but it stayed the same, and so those feelings were still the same as before college.
Okay. Let's see. I'm just looking at my list here. Just make sure we don't miss anything. Do you feel like your concentration has been affected by your mood at all? Like on those days that you're really stressed out, is it hard to concentrate in class or concentrate on homework?
I would say yes. I find that sometimes I'm in class and I'm not retaining or getting any info, and so I have to go home, and I just feel like a lot of it's unpleasant, I don't wanna do it, so it's difficult to actually pay attention,
Mhm.
um, overall.
Okay, I hear that. And that can be really hard, especially when a class it sounds like you're still early in your college career, so I'm sure you're doing a lot of kind of core required classes that maybe aren't as attuned to your interest, um, which I hear can be really tough to get through sometimes. Um, let's see. Have you had any thoughts of harming yourself or anyone else lately?
No.
Okay. And have you had any thoughts of harming yourself in the past?
Um, no.
Let's see. So we kind of made it through our depressive mood questionnaire there, and was just asking you some specifics. At this point, it does sound like to me that you may be experiencing depression of sorts, um, especially with kind of those mood fluctuations, with the stress that's going on, and some of the disinterest in some of the hobbies that you took interest in the past. Um, so there are a few things that we can do to treat depression, and we can kind of talk about those as we go along. Um, and those I saw in your intake that medication may not be something that you're super willing to explore. And I think we could come up with some ideas that don't have to rely on medication. Um, some of those could be exercises that we implement into kind of your everyday routine. We could change some things up. We could try to work on building those relationships with friends so that you have more support. And then also work on some calming techniques when you are feeling like that mood is really dysregulated. Um, but we can definitely talk about those as we go along. Do you have any questions that have come up that I haven't got a chance to answer?
Um, I don't have any of my own questions, so
Okay. Okay. Awesome. Let's see. Just making sure I didn't miss anything. So Jamie, I feel like we've, talked about a lot of things today. Looking into the future, if you're interested in meeting with me again, I'd be happy to do that. We might kind of dig a little bit more into different areas of your life. Like I said before, we can work on some skills and some tools on how to really manage those depressive symptoms that you're having. Um, let's see. Before we close, anything else you'd like to say, or any questions that you have?
um, so what will happen after this session?
So typically after this session, we can start scheduling. Usually new patients will schedule like once a week, and we can work with your schedule, kind of work in between classes to see what time works best. If you're okay with doing teletherapy, we can keep doing this option. If you want to do in person, I have some spots available for in person as well. Um, but as we kind of go along and go through future sessions, we'll just be building skills, and we'll be working just towards goals that we kind of come up together.
Okay, thank you.
All right. All right. Well, then I will reach out to you with some scheduling questions, and I will see you next time. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.